Connecticut Landlord-Tenant Laws and Rights for 2023. Are you a landlord or tenant in Connecticut navigating the complex landscape of rental laws and rights? Well, in this video, we will dive into the latest updates and must-knows for 2023. Landlord-tenant laws may vary depending on state, making it more important to pay attention to the details. We're going to go over the Connecticut landlord-tenant laws so that every party has a clear idea of what to do in specific cases. Is Connecticut a landlord-friendly state? It depends on the case. Rental prices in Connecticut are usually high, which is a great opportunity for landlords. However, there are many laws and conditions that benefit tenants in the case of a dispute. If we look at it from a renter's perspective, Connecticut can be considered a landlord-friendly state, as long as they're compliant with Connecticut law. What is a rental agreement in Connecticut? The name implies a written or oral agreement between the landlord and tenant that specifies the conditions for leasing a property. According to Connecticut landlord-tenant laws, it's important to provide these agreements in every case since they're going to grant rights and privileges to both parties. All federal clauses regarding housing and renting conditions can be found in the Connecticut General Statutes. To learn more, click the link in the description. Is a rental agreement always needed in Connecticut? These agreements may be drafted orally or in written form. However, it's recommended that Connecticut landlords always provide a written lease to have legal proof of everything agreed upon. This can help both parties in case a dispute goes to court. According to Connecticut landlord-tenant laws, while this decision relies mostly on the landlord, they have to draft a written lease agreement if their lease is longer than 12 months. Landlords' rights and obligations. According to Connecticut law, landlords have the right to request rent payments on time, deduct damage repairs from the security deposit if it exceeds normal wear and tear, and a safe and calm environment for neighbors and other tenants. The landlord must provide a rental unit that complies with local health and safety conditions. If the tenant requests any big repairs on the unit, landlords must promptly provide them, which is usually 15 days within a written notice. Keep in mind that if the landlord doesn't comply with these repairs and the unit doesn't comply with the minimum housing requirements, the tenant may be legally allowed to partially withhold rent, deduct the repairing costs from the monthly rent, or file a court order through their housing court. Landlords may not evict a tenant in acts of retaliation or discrimination for exercising their required housing rights. Tenant rights and obligations. A Connecticut tenant has the right to live in a habitable apartment that complies with local housing and safety rules and seek housing without any discrimination from their landlord. As a Connecticut law states, tenant rights allow them to request repairs for damages that exceed normal wear and tear in the apartment. If the landlord fails to provide these repair services, tenant rights in Connecticut also allow them to partially stop paying rent to provide the required repair jobs or give the landlord a court order. The Connecticut tenant has a legal obligation to maintain the rental apartment in proper condition at all times. This involves making any small repair jobs or maintenance routines required for it to keep working properly. Aside from keeping the property in optimal conditions, tenants in Connecticut must comply with paying rent on time, providing required small fixes or fixtures and general plumbing, and maintaining a quiet environment that doesn't disturb neighbors or other tenants. Clauses. These are the general clauses found in most lease agreements, and they need to be followed at all times to comply with Connecticut laws. Make sure to listen to this list thoroughly to understand how a lease works in this state. Rent payments. Landlords may require their tenant to pay rent on time as stated in Connecticut laws. Connecticut landlords cannot require their tenants to make rent payments by electronic transfers, and if the tenant decides to pay in cash, the landlord must give the tenant a receipt with all the required information. Is there rent control in Connecticut? As of today, rent control policies are prohibited in Connecticut. This means that the landlord may charge the tenant any amount of rent that they consider appropriate for their lease. Can a landlord increase rent in Connecticut? A landlord may increase rent prices without having to send any written notice to their tenant. Alternatively, fair rent commissions are allowed under current state laws. Can a landlord charge late fees? Connecticut landlords have the legal right to charge late fees if the tenant doesn't provide the payment on time. However, renters may only charge these fees after the 9-day grace period stated by Connecticut laws. If the lease is a month-to-month or a week-to-week one, this grace period is reduced to 4 days. Security deposits. According to local landlord-tenant laws, Connecticut landlords can request a security deposit from their tenant. It's important to note that the security deposit value cannot be higher than the value of the 2 months' rent. If the tenant is over 62 years old, the security deposit cannot be higher than the value of 1 month of rent. The security deposit must be returned within 30 days of the tenant moving out of the rental property or within 15 days of the tenant sending a notice. Landlords who fail to return the security deposit could receive a court order from their tenant, and they may be liable to pay 2 times the value of the deposit. There isn't any information regarding deductions from security deposits. Still, generally the landlord might deduct a partial amount of the deposit in case of an unpaid rent or extreme damages in the rental property. Lease termination and evictions in Connecticut. A landlord may send an eviction notice to their tenant on a periodic lease if they wish. However, they must make sure that they provide at least 3 days of notice for eviction in cases of weekly or monthly leases. If you want your very own lease agreement template for the state of Connecticut, check out the link in the description to download one. Tenants who want to terminate the lease before it ends must disclose information of any of the following conditions: active military duty, unacceptable living conditions, breach in the lease terms, domestic violence or harassment, health issues, and early termination clauses. When it comes to an eviction from a leased unit, the landlord can do it if the tenants don't leave the rental unit after the lease ends, a breach in the lease occurs, information of criminal acts courts as eviction grounds, illegal gambling, drugs or alcohol, prostitution, etc., and non-payment of rent. Depending on the eviction circumstances, tenants can receive either a 3-day notice to pay or quit or a 30-day notice. If this is the case, the landlord may take the eviction proceedings to court. At-will tenants can receive an immediate eviction notice if needed. On the other hand, a landlord may not send an eviction notice in retaliation or discrimination. Click the link in the description for more information on the eviction process and laws for Connecticut. Housing discrimination. According to the Fair Housing Act, landlords must present equal rental conditions that don't discriminate against tenants based on their gender identity, national origin, race, religion, sexual origin, or marital status. If tenants need to file a court order for discrimination, Connecticut's Commission on Human Rights is the legal entity responsible for handling these claims. For more information, click the link in the description. Landlords' rights to entry according to state law. Landlords must give their tenant advance notice before they enter the rental property. Although there isn't any information about the appropriate time of entry to the rental property, it's assumed that the landlord must enter at reasonable hours. Overall, staying informed on Connecticut landlord-tenant laws and rights is crucial for both parties to have a successful and peaceful rental relationship. Whether you're a landlord or a tenant, understanding the laws and exercising your rights can prevent disputes and ensure a smooth rental experience. If you need any specific information for rental clauses in Connecticut, consider seeking legal advice. I hope this video has provided valuable insights and resources for you to navigate the world of rental properties in Connecticut. Thank you for watching. Please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. Also, if you'd like to see more videos, check this out.